Good morning. My name is Lee Corey, and I'm the managing partner of Smart Business. On behalf of the Smart Business team and all of our sponsors, I would like to welcome you to the 2021 St. Louis Smart Business Dealmakers Conference presented by PNC. We have a star-studded lineup today of roughly 50 speakers, including timely interviews with business leaders and dealmakers that will be streaming on the event platform throughout the day. Part of our goal today is to empower you to connect the dots. At today's event, you can join general and topical networking sessions, offer questions to our panelists during live Q&A sessions, join small group video meetings, and even schedule one-to-one Zoom calls with other attendees. Today's event is brought to you in partnership with 20 leading organizations, and I'd like to extend a special thank you to Mike Scully and David Bensinger at PNC, our presenting sponsor. To help us plan this year's Dealmakers Conference, we formed a host committee of leading entrepreneurs, investors, and advisors from around the region. I'd like to thank each of them, as what you see today is a culmination of their collective efforts. Now, I'd like to turn it over to our presenting sponsor, Mike Scully, Regional President for PNC. Thanks, Mike.
Welcome to the 2021 St. Louis Dealmakers Conference. On behalf of PNC, we are elated to bring you this M&A event, which highlights the tremendous deal making in the region. Hopefully, PNC is a name familiar to you. Founded over 160 years ago with a headquarters in Pittsburgh, PNC will become our nation's fifth largest bank, pending the approval of our acquisition of BBVA US in the next couple of months. This will then put PNC in 29 of the top 30 markets coast to coast. We have built an outstanding team here in St. Louis since arriving with National City acquisition in 2010, so give us a shot. And while you may know a little bit about PNC, you may not know as much about some of our subsidiaries dealing with deal making. Harris Williams is a preeminent middle market investment bank specializing in M&A advisory services. The firm advises and advocates in several specialized industries across the Americas, Europe, and Asia Pacific. Their services include mergers and acquisitions, fairness opinions, and restructuring advisory. They are based in Richmond, Virginia. Solebury Capital advises corporate, financial, and VC clients as they raise capital in the equity markets and as owners consider efficient and value maximizing monetization strategies. Solebury is based near Philadelphia. And finally, PNC Midland is the nation's second largest provider of loan servicing, asset management, and technology solutions for the commercial real estate industry. They service over 30,000 loans representing over $600 billion and are based in Kansas City. Well, let's get started. We have a great day in store for you with different types of sessions throughout the day and more than 50 different speakers, including our midday keynote session featuring the 2021 Dealmakers Awards winners. Beyond meeting this year's honorees, you'll be treated to a series of one-on-ones with the winners and a fireside chat with two, Tom Hillman of Lewis & Clark Ventures and Jim Eberlin of Top Ops. We think you're really going to enjoy these conversations and panels today. We've created numerous opportunities to network with one another and hope you'll explore all the great features of this year's conference. While we can't be with you in person this year, we have been able to pivot to this tremendous virtual environment. We hope you enjoy it. We look forward to seeing you all again next year, but in person. Now, from our morning sponsor, Anders CPA, to tell you about our amazing kickoff session for today's conference, please welcome Robert Minkler Jr. Robert?
Good morning, and thank you, Michael. On behalf of Anders, we're excited to support this year's Dealmakers Conference. Even in the unlikeliest of circumstances, like the current COVID-19 crisis, deal-making seems to get done. People are raising capital, experiencing liquidity events, making acquisitions, and selling companies. At Anders, we work with privately held companies, high net worth individuals, and other organizations every day to help them achieve their highest potential, whatever that may mean for them. We free our clients to do more in their professional and personal lives by delivering a collaborative approach to our tax and audit services. But more importantly, a significant portion of our 250 partners and staff focus on bringing high-value consulting services to our clients, which includes buy and sell side transaction advisory and related services. We are committed to the St. Louis community and are proud to have called downtown home for over 55 years. So with that in mind, we're excited to help kick off the day with our leadoff session, an M&A Dealmakers Roundtable. We have an amazing quartet of active investors and M&A experts who are here to share their thoughts on the state of M&A, SPACs, and deal flow in and around St. Louis. This session is presented by our title and presenting sponsor, PNC. So let's meet our panel. First, welcome former U.S. Congressman Harold Ford, who today serves as Vice Chairman, Corporate and Institutional Banking for PNC Financial Services Group. Next, meet Kyle Chapman, President, Barry Waymiller Companies. And please welcome Jim Cooper, Managing Partner and Founder, Thompson Street Capital Partners. Now, let's meet our moderator. Once again, Michael Scully, Regional President for the State of Missouri, PNC. Michael, take it away.
Thank you, Robert. Let me start with a deeper dive into the all-star panel we have with us here this morning. I'll begin with Harold Ford. Harold is Vice Chairman, Corporate and Institutional Banking for PNC. Harold is also Chairman and CEO of Empowerment and Inclusion Capital One Corp., the first purpose-driven SPAC focused on acquiring diverse or inclusive businesses and sponsored by the PNC Financial Services Group. Before joining PNC, Harold was a U.S. Congressman representing Tennessee's 9th District surrounding Memphis from 1997 through 2007. Between 2011 and 2017, the Congressman worked on Wall Street with Bank of America Merrill Lynch as Vice Chairman and Senior Policy Advisor. He also worked with Morgan Stanley as a Managing Director. His name is really familiar to you probably because of frequent appearances on politically themed programming like NBC's Meet the Press, MSNBC, CNN, and others. We're also thrilled that Kyle Chapman's with us today. Kyle is President, Barry Waymiller, a privately held global manufacturer with over $3 billion in annual revenue. The firm was founded way back in 1885 and is headquartered in St. Louis. Mr. Chapman also co-founded BW Forsyth Partners, which is Barry Waymiller's $600 million hybrid private equity firm seeking investments in the manufacturing and commercial product sectors. And finally, we have Jim Cooper. Jim is Managing Partner and Founder, Thompson Street Capital Partners, a St. Louis bank private equity firm located, focused on investing in founder-led middle market businesses. Under Mr. Cooper's leadership, the firm has raised over $2.5 billion in capital from across the globe and has completed over 150 acquisitions since their founding in 2000. They are currently raising fund number 6. Well, gentlemen, welcome. We have an awful lot to talk about, and so let's get started. So it seems that every day brings news of record issuances of high-yield bonds, CLOs, SPACs, all of which are feeding the refi and acquisition markets. Discuss what you're seeing in the broad capital markets and the implications for M&A activity. Let's start with you, Harold.
Well, first off, thanks for having me. I know our time is a little scarce, so I'll dispense with the pleasantries other than to say it's a delight to be on with this group and a delight to be representing PNC on the call. As you shared in the intro, I'm excited about one of the most important things the bank has me doing, and one of the most important things I think the bank has done in some time. Bill Demchak, our CEO and chairman, decided last year that the bank wanted to be creative. The bank wanted to be assertive and sustainable in trying to come up with answers to some of the challenges that the country really had uncovered last year and as we continue into this year. And the bank has some abilities to leverage and some capacities to leverage around capital and helping businesses access capital. And one of the things that the bank decided to do was to sponsor this SPAC. So it's given us a perspective. That's a perspective I bring to the conversation, trying to understand how crowded the market may be, how frothy it may be, and how crowded it may be in terms of capital looking for companies. As you shared, we have a unique focus with our SPAC. So some of the crowdedness, and one of the real, I guess, the most tangible thing that I've seen in this seat in the last several weeks, in the last few months, is that the companies that we're looking at, and we're a generalist SPAC with an edge in that we want to find a company that's either diverse-led, as you shared, or a company that is focused on economic or societal inclusion, so it can be a wrongly credentialed ESG company. The first 7 weeks after we went public in mid-January, We had the conversations, my management team and I had, it's just a CFO and myself, who's a great CFO, a woman named Jenny Hinkles. We interacted most exclusively or always exclusively with the founders, the CEOs, the chairman, the CFO, and a lot of times those people had multiple titles. The last 7 weeks, because the market has gotten so crowded, and I'll be curious to hear what Jim has to say about this as well. We've seen most of the companies we're talking to are represented by some of the big bracket banks. So the Goldmans, the Citis, the JP Morgans are now, the Morgan Stanleys are behind a lot of these efforts. The Bank of Americas and Citi are behind, or I should say, managing these processes. It's good and bad. It's the bad part is that it creates some SPAC off tension. The good part for us is that I think when people learn about our SPAC and we think we are unique, every SPAC thinks they're unique. We think we're unique because two reasons. One, we plan to be an ongoing, we at PNC plan to be an ongoing perpetual partner with the business we combine with, as long as that business wants it. So we will bring to bear Harris Williams, Barry Trout, will bring to bear our regional presidents, obviously our lending platform, to try to be as helpful and supportive as we possibly can. So we're thinking about businesses that we combine with in that regard. Then finally, the business we combine with, one of their biggest shareholders will be our foundation at PNC, because we're giving away all of our profits and promote from the deal, from the transaction to our foundation, all in an effort to support $1 billion effort we've already funded after the sale of PNC shares in BlackRock. $1 billion was allocated to the foundation to do that. So, SPACs are another way to go public. And, I welcome some of the scrutiny and the regulation. Perhaps it's because I come from the public sector that I'm not afraid of that. I think it will help streamline, help provide efficiency, and I think give companies, and most equally important, if not more so important, investors that confidence and increased trust around the fact that SPACs indeed are viable, indeed are respectable, indeed are credible, and oftentimes the best way for a company to go public. But I'd be curious to hear my reactions from other panelists around what they're seeing, and if they're seeing it similarly or not.
Sure, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if ever you remember, but SPACs were sort of a fleeting thing in the early 2000s. There was about a 3-year period where there were quite a few of them, and it just seemed to go away. And it could have been, the financial crisis of '08, might have been the end of it. This time feels a lot more real to me, and this time it feels like this is now another financing vehicle that's probably here to stay. We don't do a lot because we're buying from founders, and they generally don't want to be running a public company. They'd rather go through a private exit. We do have a few larger investments that are looking at SPACs. It's more capital. It's another way to get capital deployed. It's another vehicle, and it's certainly going to be a big part of M&A for as far as I can see. And there's going to be a lot of trickle downs into the things that we do privately.
Kyle, what are you saying?
Yeah, it just shows the creativity of the public markets, again, finding efficient ways to get capital to the market. And it's just probably exacerbating an issue that we as buyers see, just funneling more capital into the market with the amount of companies able to buy not changing, right? So the supply demand dynamics are what are creating difficult opportunities to buy businesses the way we used to, a decade ago. And we'll have to evolve with that. And like Jim says, we play in the private market, so not a lot of people want to be public. So I guess we have that angle for us, but it's unbelievable to see the efficiency of capital. Used to be $1 billion fund, a $10 billion fund was something that was a real differentiator, and now it seems like they're out there and they get raised overnight. And so it's just something we're gonna have to deal with, and it'll be interesting to watch the evolution of SPACs, given not the newness of them, but the amount of them kind of in the market right now.
Thanks, Kyle. You mentioned supply of capital. There's talk that over $1 billion in private equity dry powder is sitting on the sidelines. And with this competition for deals, I'm curious, how does your firm differentiate yourself? Jim, start with you. How does Thompson Street differentiate yourself from all the rest?
Well, the founder that's selling a business has a different set of criteria than, let's say, we will have when we sell our business, which is going to be more of a normal sort of transaction with hundreds of potential buyers. And I hate to say it, but generally we're looking for the highest price out there. The founder's looking for fit. They're looking for continuity of the business that they've built. They're very proud of the business they built. They spent 25 years or so. There's other family members involved. Price matters, unfortunately. It matters a lot, but the rest of it, the intangibles of what are you going to do with this company? What are you going to do with the employees? How are you going to treat them? Those things are really important to a founder. And we just have a long track record of treating the culture we buy with respect. We're there to grow the top line. That's our number one way to make money. And growing the top line, the way you do that is you motivate the team, you motivate the people. You don't go in immediately and cut their 401ks. That is a demotivating action that might save a little bit of money in the short run, but definitely loses in the long. So we're able to put these founders in touch with the many founders we worked with in the past and convince them we respect their business. We want to make it bigger and better, and that's what we're going to do alongside them. They're often investing along with us. So we have really a different approach than most people out there. And we still have to be competitive, don't get me wrong, but we focus heavily on the intangibles and trying to win deals.
Kyle, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, you heard a really good recipe for success from Jim, which is why they've done so well and grown so much and done so many transactions. I think we started Foresight Partners about 12 years ago as a investment arm for a large privately held manufacturing company, which I now run. So we had one distinct advantage, that we had a single LP that didn't need their money back, right? And so what does that allow you to do? One, it allows you to be a permanent hold, where you can buy and build enduring and sustainable business over the long term. The average private equity hold, and this isn't private equity being bad people, this is the business model, is 4-ish years. And there's not a lot you can get done in 4 years. And so the way we differentiate ourselves are really kind of, we enter into markets that we can buy and build. Acquisitions are in our DNA, growing companies through M&A is in our DNA. So we do it over the long run. 2, we're operating executives. We're not capital allocators. So we go in and invest in business models that we understand, business models that we know how to add value to. And when we show sellers our track record, it matters, right? It says, oh, I can apply this to you and have hopefully the same results. And then our third point of differentiating is, thematic investing. We really only invest in things we truly understand and to which we add value. We don't chase trends and things like that. And so those are big differentiators. The other element is, Barry Wehmler is known for its culture. I believe we'll talk about this a bit later. Culture matters, people matters, and legacy matters. And so a seller, if they're putting a notch on their belt that I sold for 15 times important to them, they're usually not going to sell to us. If making sure they're putting their people in the best hands to grow the business, the people that help them achieve that very success that they just did in selling their company, that they can preserve their legacy and put them with a long-term holder, that's a big differentiation point. And it's a reason we win a lot of the transactions we have, not on price.
Great comments. I'm sure Harold will agree with this comment, but one unmistakable trend we're seeing in the banking business is ESG investing. That would be environmental social governance. How has this impacted private equity, both as you raise capital and seek investment opportunities?
Well, first off, I think listening to Kyle and Jim and to borrow a phrase that Kyle used about the efficiency of capital, and the evolution of vehicles and ways in which capital can be deployed. The ESG story in a lot of ways is a part of that evolution. And that evolution has been, encouraged and really accelerated by public policy changes and appetite changes of customers and consumers. You think about where we were 4 years ago as we talked about ESG, and where we are today and where we are going forward. One of the things that's been interesting to me is we look at some of the companies that have come our way, half of them fall, maybe 2/3 of them easily fall into the kind of the ESG bucket. I think even the way we define ESG now is broader than we did 2 years, 4 years ago, 6 years ago. And when you consider the volume and velocity of money over the next 4 years that's going to be expended to help build out the country's energy, telco, infrastructure, physical infrastructure, as well, I think it only makes the whole idea and the whole bucket of investing in this space that much more interesting. I'd be curious. Kyle said something about the model as he was reacting to something that Jim said about the PE model, the private equity model. It's not a bad model; it's just their model. I wonder how that model, that 4 to 5 year hold, will play in the ESG investing over the next 2 to 4 to 6 years. Does that business model change? Is it forced to change? So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. But I tell you, the number of companies, and certainly as you look at the capital that's being deployed in the SPAC space, the number of ESG plays, especially and increasingly in the electric vehicle space, is mind-boggling. And certainly 6 months ago to a year ago, it didn't look as if that's where the volume and should say the activity would be. But I'm curious to hear what my colleagues say about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a lot of European investors, and my strong sense is that Europe was very focused on ESG before the investors in the United States were focused. So this is a sort of a 10-year subject for us. But we dabbled in it for years. We were aware of it, and it was something that we had in the back of our minds. And then, as Harold just said, starting about 4 years ago, it became much more front and center. It became much more important in the United States with the investors here, and it's even still increasingly important in Europe. And so you've gone from dabbling to focusing to really now concentrating on this issue. And for example, 4 years ago, an investment committee memo would say, here are the ESG impacts of this business. We're now investing in software to monitor every company we buy from an ESG standpoint, to score them. And the only way you can show someone you're doing better on ESG is to have your score go up. And having a score makes it front and center and not in the back of your mind. So quite honestly, it's a little bit of a pain to ask your companies, what their total tonnage they've sent to the landfill was last year. But if you force everyone up and down the chain to concentrate on these issues, you do get results. The S is particularly become important because that's where diversity comes in and inclusion. And, that's something that's definitely I think that's a top of mind issue, and something that if you're constantly aware and thinking about it, you get results. And we're going to be forced to show results and not just sort of talk about it. So it's here to stay, growing in importance. As I said to someone about 5 years ago on the Richter scale, it was a 1.0. Last year it was a 4.0. Next year will be a 6.0. It is really gaining ground fast, and anyone that's not really paying attention to it's making a big mistake.
Thank you. Well, let's switch gears a bit and talk about the importance of culture in the M&A business. We touched on it briefly, but Barry Waymiller is known for their truly human leadership culture. And this is best captured in Everybody Matters, which is a book authored by Bob Chapman, chairman and CEO of Barry Waymiller. Kyle, I'm going to start with you. With over 115 acquisitions in 28 different countries, how do you make the BW culture happen?
Mike, I appreciate you starting with me. If you didn't, my dad would probably have an issue with it since he wrote the book on culture. But thank you for that. You know, it's actually a lot simpler than it sounds, right? When we talk about the fact that everybody matters, right? Everyone matters. So when you think about the S and ESG, I mean, we've been on this for a long time. But when you talk about everybody matters, when you go out and you sit down and you listen to people, to these companies that we've adopted, they haven't been listened to in years. They've been told what to do. They do 10 things right, don't get a word said to them. They do one thing wrong and they get their head chewed off. The historical business environment that our people have operated in has been incredibly stressful. So when we come in and we talk about cultural strategy, just like we do financial strategy or sales strategies or operational strategies, a cultural strategy, it is a breath of fresh air and it is feeding the hungry. And so we do that, effectively because it's simple, it's a part of our core beliefs, and it's what we do every day. And so the way we do it, when we go out and we buy a business, we communicate our intentions, we live up to them, we listen to hear how we're going, we course correct, and we keep doing it. And when we let them know our intentions are to grow the business, when we let them know our intentions are to listen to them, and we let them know our intentions are not to sell them, and then we do all those things, it builds on each other. And so for us, cultural deployment is a big angle, a big strategy, and people are watching what we're doing. So if I've talked to a seller 10 years ago and said, hey, we're going to do these 5 things because we're very much in the proprietary deal flow, we're going to do these 5 things, and I come back and meet with them 10 years later, and they've seen us do transactions where we've shut facilities down or sold something, we weren't living up to it. In fact, when we go back 10 years later and we can say, yeah, we told you this 10 years ago, we've continued to execute, we'd still love to partner with you. That gets them more and more interested in joining forces with us. And it's been, a real kind of proof point in culture not only matters with the people that we have today, cultural, people seeking new partners want to know that their people are going to be taken care of. And I hope that, we can be a sign of that business is really good for the world, right? Business has a way to build a better world. And it's not just education and religion and government, but business, which has been cast with a really, poor reputation, can really be a force for good in the world. And that's what we're focused on. Thank you for that.
Jim, thoughts on that?
Yeah, ours is a lot more nuanced than Kyle's because he's got a general culture of the entire Bay Area Miller family that he's indoctrinating, and there's lots of challenges that he has underplayed in getting that culture uniformly across his whole network. Ours is, we got a Thompson Street culture, and it reflects a certain type of value system and a certain way that we operate here. And then we've got the many cultures of the businesses we've bought. And there are threads that we like to run through every company, especially when it comes to governance and things like that. But these businesses do have their own culture the day we get there. And we have found that if we don't like the culture, we move to the next deal. And if it's a culture we appreciate along with the business model, we try to enhance it, but not change it. And we again, as someone has mentioned, we're in these deals 4 to 6 years. And so we really, to try to make the cultures uniform from one company to another, it would be a multi-year process and would eat heavily into that 4 to 6 year program. So I would say with us, it's a go, no go on the culture that exists, and then introduce our own threads as well as much as we can early. And chances are the culture of one business is not going to be the same as the culture of another business that we've acquired at any point in time.
Well, let me touch on that with a differentiation of our panel here. So there are so many different business models for private equity and for, frankly, M&A strategy. So you have the SPAC model, which Harold's familiar with. You have the 4 to 6 year hold. which Thompson Street pursues, and then you have the Barry Waymiller model. So when you take this, for example, the Barry Waymiller website cites an acquisition strategy as more adoption than acquisition, frequently with lifetime holds. And I would think a SPAC model, a Thompson Street model, would be more like buy it, build it, sell it. You talk about that differentiation, that important distinction. Harold, start with you.
So, I would agree with your kind of general characterization of the way SPACs look at things. We are, again, one of our differentiators, not that your question, I get the larger thrust of your question, is that we're seeking to be a long-term partner. I think some in the SPAC world have a little bit more of a financial mercenary kind of approach and may have a shorter window. One of the things that and it's interesting to hear us talk about culture, because I think the future of capitalism and the way capitalism will be passed to the next generation, particularly with all of the challenges in business and in politics that we hear around it, is I think some people don't think the culture. I don't. To Kyle's point, I don't think there are enough Kyles in the world, and there are not enough approaches like his in the world. We need more of that if we're going to have conscious and surviving capitalism the way we want it. You look at some of the companies, you look at some of the trends, and I would argue they're not trends, just the way the world is going. Here we are, one of the biggest direct listings ever around Coinbase, and we talk about 4 years ago what people thought about stuff, and 4 years later we're thinking about not only digital currencies and a digital currency, but we're thinking about it even from the standpoint of a national security threat. One of the leaders and one of the biggest and most prolific voices in business suggests that this might be some sort of financial weapon being pursued and advanced by one of our great adversaries, great allies in some regard, but maybe our biggest geopolitical adversary over the next 75 years. So I think as we think about capitalism, and we think about culture, and we think about the marriage of the two and how successful when you're able to get the culture right, what that means for a company. I think even in the SPAC space, and for that matter, in any space of any group of people consider themselves who are going to be deemed as successful investors, you're going to have to rethink a lot of this. And I think we'll be closer to Kyle than we will be to any other model. So, we think about it differently at Empowerment and Inclusion Capital SPAC. We want to be a long-term partner. We want to build that culture. But I'll be curious to hear if Kyle and Jim have a different perspective on these new trends and these new kinds of things that clearly are going to make a lot of money for people and democratizing access for people across up and down ecosystems.
Well, Kyle, it's an important distinction. What are you saying?
Well, I mean, listen, the facts are there's a rise in longer term holds in terms of funds that have longer lives.
Yeah.
There is a rise of family office type investing, which has a more permanency associated with it. And so again, the private equity model is what it is, right? It's not bad. It's set up a certain way. I think people are longing for something to listen, I've been owned by this founder for 30, 40 years, and I want to know that I'm going to be with somebody the next 10 to 20 as we pursue this type of growth. And when you enter the private equity, this didn't used to be the case, but when you enter the private equity, you now put yourself on the hamster wheel of transactions until you're either public or sold to a larger strategic. And this isn't the case for everyone, but that's what people are seeing. And they're like, that isn't where I want to go. I don't want to be on this transaction. The minute I'm bought, I'm for sale, right? The minute I literally enter from a founder-owned business to a private equity owned, I am immediately for sale. And that's a tough place to drive strategy, make investments, do other deals and stuff. And so it's just, it makes sense that people are moving towards our model. The sad thing is that there are a lot of people aren't afforded this model, right? We are very fortunate that we have a single LP that is allowing us to invest into perpetuity. There are a handful of other examples probably 2 handfuls of other examples like that exist that aren't public, right? That aren't public where you're still managing on a quarterly basis. So I think the facts are pointing more towards our model. I think private equity will continue to exist because it's produced great returns and built great businesses and things for folks. But as you know, Harold talked about moving to more conscious capitalism, right? And to, you know, when you hear the people of the Business Roundtable talk about focusing on all stakeholders, not just investor returns, I think longer term perpetual holds are going to grow in importance and grow in relevance in our market.
Jim?
I'm not going to disagree with anything Kyle just said. I mean, let's face it, the greatest investor out there, Warren Buffett, you know, lines up with Kyle on this, and for a lot of good reasons. It's ironic that in the private equity model, you sell your winners, and you know, if you really thought about it, you'd sell your losers and you'd keep your winners. And I
say that one more time, Jim.
and I do think there are now, as we know, there are now long hold funds being raised, and they're usually raised by a firm who already has 5 other types of models, so they can add the long hold fund. They match very well with insurance company investors, for example. So there's a movement to that. In our case, though, most of our founders, they know they're going to roll into our deal. They know they're going to roll into anyone's deal, but they like to tell me, I want to roll once. I want to help facilitate the exit. I want to help facilitate the generational transfer of wealth from the business that I built to the cash for my children. And they don't want to stay for long haul. The ones that do will call Kyle and not me. And I understand that. So the private equity model facilitates a certain section of the market that wants to do certain things. And again, and then our investors clearly want to invest, receive back, invest, receive back. And that's the model that they operate from that side. But, you know, if you really think about it intellectually, you know, there's a tax consequence to buying and selling that doesn't exist if you buy and hold. There's a knowledge consequence. There's familiarity. It's far easier to build. I can name a lot of reasons to stay in the long game. It's not the game I chose to play. So, you know, I play the game that we're in very well, and I see the advantages to some of the other models out there, and there are things that you will see. There are things we will do over time that will begin to look a little bit more like the Kyle model than the one that we've been doing right now.
Jim, just to add on 2 things you said real quickly. One, I'll say it a little differently, but letting your profits run, right? So, you know, that you work so hard to find the good business, get with the leadership team, execute on strategy, and right as it's like hitting, you sell instead of letting your profits run. So that's one of the things Chet Walker, who you know, Jim, kind of ingrained in my head. The second thing is the compounding element of returns, right? I mean, you know, over time, a lot of the biggest dollar value of returns on a 10, 15-year hold are concentrated in the last 5 years with, you know, exponential growth and compounding. So it's those elements we're seeing now that we're 10 years into this and we've owned businesses for 10 years. But you're right, we're fortunate to have a model, and, you know, Jim does his model in a fantastic manner in the right way. And it will be interesting to see how they continue to converge.
I really like now that we're going to call it the Kyle model. So we have the Kyle model, and then we have the SPAC model, and we have the Thompson Street model. So we just have a few more minutes here. I want to turn to St. Louis a little bit and turn to the future. So maybe a brief perspective from each of you on how does St. Louis stack up, if you have an opinion. And we've mentioned that the last 4 years, 5 years have been, you know, transformative. What do the next 4 or 5 years bring, even 10 years? So we'll go around the horn. Jim, we'll start with you.
So we view St. Louis as a huge plus in executing our model for 2 or 3 reasons. One is we're not competing against the money centers, against the New Yorks, the Bostons, and San Franciscos when we're sitting with the founder at dinner, the founder's family, and we're trying to create that fit. We're Midwestern. We're the all shucks guys from Missouri. We can talk fly fishing and we can talk Big Ten basketball, and we can talk those things and bond a lot better. I think that's a huge plus. The biggest plus that I see, though, is, and if you go to our website and you look at the quality of the people that we have at Thompson Street, it's Wharton and Harvard and Stanford and Booth and Kellogg for MBA programs, and many of them have worked for very successful private equity firms, but they have one common trait. Most of them were raised in St. Louis, or their spouse was raised in St. Louis, and when they want to raise their family, they want to come home. And what we do from a recruiting standpoint is we keep our antenna up for that superstar out there that wants to come home. And we have them in as a summer intern. We have 4 summer interns this summer from top business schools, top MBA programs. And we'll hire, 2 to 4 of those. We're getting people. I would stack our team up against any New York, Boston, Chicago, San Francisco team. And but they want to be here. They want to contribute, and it's a wonderful place for us to build this firm, and wouldn't have it any other way.
Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo Midwestern values. Not only are true, but they sell well when you're talking to founder-owned businesses, and what our beliefs are. The hometown discount, as Jim just referred to, just like the Cardinals, we're able to recruit good players that want to play in front of a reasonable crowd, but are willing to not have to get paid at New York style money. Quality of life we bring here is good. You can still do high level deal making, work with some of the best executives across the country, and still get home in 15 minutes and be at your kid's soccer game or baseball game. And that's really important. And Jim's crew is top notch. We've got a growing crew as well here. And so, St. Louis in general, from a deal making standpoint, we're lucky to have phenomenal organizations here. The Thompson Shoots of the world, but when you think about Enterprise Holdings and other great foundation, Purina, you've got Commerce Bank, you've just got these businesses here that care so deeply about St. Louis and making sure St. Louis is rising on the map in terms of, we have WashU. I mean, Washington University is just a fantastic attractor of talent. You see us growing in kind of the startup community, and there's so many great things going on in St. Louis. We are aw shucks. We tend to undersell ourselves, but I think we're at a real inflection point of good things going on, and just couldn't be prouder to be a part of the city and to be able to work in and around folks like Jim and the many other great executives in St. Louis.
Thank you, Kyle. Harold, got a closing comment?
But I'm not from St. Louis. I just say I echo exactly what's been said. I did grow up in Memphis, Tennessee, and St. Louis was our only back when you only had three stations on TV, and I used to watch the Cardinals every Saturday. And Memphis State University used to play in St. Louis for the Sweet 16 every year when we advanced that far. It was Memphis State, then down to the University of Memphis. So I'm a huge fan. I will say this: cities like St. Louis, COVID is in some ways has been a help for all the reasons that you guys just articulated. It's caused people to reset, recalibrate, and want to get re-anchored to the things that are important to them. And I think we have even redefined what's important. And you guys have a lot going on there, and I wish you nothing but the very best.
Thank you. You are all fabulous. We're now going to adjourn to Q&A. I hope our audience will join us for the after session. And I really thank this panelists. They were indeed what I said, an all-star panel, and they were fabulous. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael, Jim, Kyle, and Harold. That was exceptional, informative, and a great way to kick off today's conference. We now invite you to meet our panelists at a special after session. If you have not already added it to your My Agenda schedule for the day, you can do so by going to the Agenda tab on the main homepage and adding it. We hope to see you over there. Thank you.